of the mural exactly the way it's going to be painted. And from this, then I enlarge that 1.5 inches to a foot onto the wall and begin my painting process. And that should take me approximately 2 years, I've judged.
The dinosaurs have not always looked so active to us as Eleanor Kish depicts them. Early dinosaur artists saw them as sluggish, almost inert, like the slow-moving, cold-blooded reptiles which took their body heat from the environment around them. But today there's a new picture, an active, fast-moving dinosaur, aggressive, wide-ranging, like the warm-blooded mammals and birds which keep their body heat high by quick movement and voracious appetite. It's a picture that owes much to the work of Robert Bacher, a Colorado paleontologist and no mean artist himself.
I try to approach a dinosaur as if I'd never heard of it before. Make no assumptions. Come up to Brontosaurus and you look at it, and you watch it. You watch it move. That is, you go to the joints and the ligaments and muscles, and give it a kick. What sort of speed are you going to get out of that? And look at the footprints. What sort of speed were they cruising at? And cut the bones. How fast were they growing? Make no assumptions. That's the best way to approach an unknown animal. And I started doing that in 1965 as an undergrad at Yale. And every time I gave dinosaurs a kick, experimented with them, they would run away like warm-blooded animals. Or they'd grow really fast like warm-blooded animals. Or they'd colonize the far north like warm-blooded animals. So I'm very conservative. I call them the way I see them. You know, I mean, if it walks like a duck, and looks like a duck, and smells like a duck, it's a duck. I mean, if it grows like a warm blood and runs like a warm blood, and its bone structure looks like a warm blood, hey, I'm going to call it a warm blood.
Smithsonian senior curator Nicholas Houghton watches over a dinosaur collection so authoritative that other museums often consult it to verify their own identifications. And after 30 years at the Smithsonian, Nick Houghton is something of a dinosaur authority himself.
I agree with Bacher to the extent that they were not sluggish. The footprints show quite clearly that they were very active, and with their hind legs underneath them, with their hind legs underneath them, or all fours underneath them, they had to remain active in the way that birds and mammals remain active. I think that their motion was more consonant with their size. Most of them were quite large, and like an elephant, he can get around as fast as he has to, and that's the type of locomotion that you had for most dinosaurs.
Bacher's revolutionary ideas touched off a firestorm of controversy and new research as paleontologists sought to bolster, discredit, or modify Bacher's assertions. The debate was scientific, at least on the surface, but it was personal, too. Were the dinosaurs cold-blooded like the lowly lizard, or warm-blooded like us? Argument for argument, example for example. Bacher and his critics took the dinosaur apart and put it back together.
Now, I'm convinced dinosaurs were warm-blooded for the same series of reasons that convinced Thomas Henry Huxley in 1880 or Hermann von Meyer in 1834, and the reasons are this. If you look at dinosaur legs, and that's what impressed von Meyer, they're built for speed. They are very strong. In fact, von Meyer called the dinosaurs the pachypoda, the strong-footed animals. Dinosaurs have such big, strong legs that they must have been moving, on average, fast.
Von Meyer, who named these things pachypoda, that doesn't mean strong feet, it means thick feet. And dinosaurs had big, strong, or thick feet to support weight, and they had plenty of that. It doesn't really imply that there was any speed involved.
Number two, if you cut a dinosaur, literally, you cut dinosaur bones, and you look at them in thin section, you can take their blood pressure. The blood has rotted, and the blood vessels have rotted, but the holes left by the blood vessels preserved with great fidelity. You count those holes, dinosaur blood pressure, their blood flow rates, was way up there in the warm-blooded, hot-blooded zone.
Bacher's argument about the fine or the microscopic structure of bone indicating some kind of elaborate control of body temperature, a maintaining a high and constant body temperature, I think it's probably sound.
Number 3, dinosaurs evolved very fast. Cold-blooded animals do not. The crocodiles and alligators alive today haven't changed much in 60 million years. Dinosaurs evolved very, very fast, and that's a warm-blooded property.
He says they're quickly evolving, not like crocodiles and alligators. The crocodiles and alligators are cold-blooded. Mammals are warm-blooded. Mammals are quickly evolving, in quotes. What about fish? Teleost fish. For crying out loud, that's the silliest argument I've ever heard. Teleost fish are as cold as a clam. They're not warm-blooded at all. They're one of the most rapidly evolving groups in the world today. They're evolving faster than people can study them. Now, what kind of rot is that?
Number 4, dinosaurs were in every habitat as far north and south as there was land, including places where it was pretty cold in the winter. Tyrannosaurus rex left probably footprints in the snow in Alaska.
Barker's argument that dinosaurs were spread all over the lot, that they occupied all continents and a variety of environments, doesn't particularly apply to whether they were warm-blooded or not, except insofar as they were able to penetrate environments that were characterized by low temperatures. Well, it's possible that such things didn't exist during the Jurassic and Cretaceous, because the geologists tell us that there were no polar ice caps during that time, and that the temperature range from the equator to pole was much smaller than it is at the present time.
And number 5, dinosaur meat eaters are nearly always incredibly rare. Nearly always. Just as rare as lions and tigers are. And that could only be because, on average, each meat-eating dinosaur needed a lot of food because it was warm-blooded. There are 5 good reasons.
If it takes 10 plant-eating critters to keep one flesh-eating critter alive, you're not going to run a railroad successfully if the numbers are the same. So Barker's argument for a very high number of prey animals, relative number of predators, as indicating a high and constant body activity, metabolism, warm-bloodedness, if you want to say that, is probably sound.
Modern dinosaur art and the debate over warm-bloodedness are part of the newest wave of paleontology. The search for the living dinosaurs and the living world they inhabited. Paleontologist Hans-Dieter Seuss is part of an ongoing Smithsonian project called The Evolution of Terrestrial Ecosystems.
Paleontology for a long time was essentially a handmaiden to the other geological sciences. Paleontologists were there to describe fossils, to use those fossils to attempt age assessments for the sedimentary rocks that contained them, and this was pretty much what paleontology was restricted to. In recent years, there's also been a new line of research that has actually started to look at animals in a way as machines. How do animals feed? How do animals move? And due to a variety of sophisticated techniques, particularly electromyography, where you actually register electrical activity patterns of muscles as they become active, say during chewing or moving, and combined with that, filming animals with X-ray pictures, so you get sort of an X-ray cineradiography. You can suddenly see bones as part of a living being, and bones are thus no longer just dead, inert objects, but are part of a living organism. And once we understand the rules and principles that underlie the bones in living animals, we can apply this knowledge to the fossil record.
But as Hans-Dieter Seuss points out, all our new high-tech knowledge of the dinosaur is grounded on the same distinctly low-tech source.
Fossils are the only tangible line of evidence about patterns of evolutionary processes in the past. They are the only direct evidence. Everything that we know from population genetics and molecular biology is pretty much restricted to organisms that live right now. However, if we want to get the grand picture, how ecological communities came into being, how the entire biosphere developed, we really have to look at the fossil record.
I met a traveler from an antique land who said 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away. This is all the dinosaurs left from their 140 million year reign. And for more than a century, paleontologists have dug up the West looking for fossils, mineralized bones, trying to penetrate the secrets of the dinosaurs' life and death. The Smithsonian is home to much of the collection of OC for Othniel Charles Marsh, heir to a fortune, Yale professor, frontier filibusterer, and paleontological plutocrat. Over a quarter century of digging, Marsh led and dispatched regiment after regiment across the West. Led by guides and scouts like Marsh's friend, William Cody, the legendary Buffalo Bill, and armed to the teeth against Indian marauders and Marsh's paleontological arch-rival, Edward Drinker Cope. Marsh, a colleague wrote, was a crack shot and a fisherman of repute, at his best around the campfire, where the swapping of tall stories is a highly appreciated art. Marsh and Cope and their followers were the lead prospectors in a bone rush, and their journals painted scenes of the adventure and discovery of the frontier. The Yale party was mounted on Indian ponies and armed with rifle, revolver, geological hammer, and bowie knife. By day, hour after hour, they marched over burning sand hills without rocks or trees or sign of water, while the thermometer stood at 110 in the shade of the wagons. It was my first visit to the far west, Marsh wrote, and all was new and strange, reminding me of mid-ocean with its long rolling waves, brought suddenly to rest. It was, in fact, the bottom of an ancient sea. A Marsh lieutenant wrote of finding dinosaur remains mingled together in the most inextricable confusion and in every conceivable position, as though in some ancient mud holes these huge monsters had become mired and died, and succeeding generations had trodden their bones down and then left their own to mingle with them. This is not the west of Marsh's time, but ours. Proctor Lake, just a few miles from Comanche, Texas, about 100 miles southwest of Dallas, whose buried fossils may hold the key to a new discovery about the dinosaurs as parents. The lure of hunting dinosaurs has not weakened in the 100 years since Marsh. And if modern explorers arrive in a pickup truck instead of on horseback, the rest of the search goes on much as it did 100 years ago. The chance to uncover what has been hidden for 100 million years, to see something that was last seen by the dinosaurs themselves, still has the power to draw people with a hankering for discovery. Like Nicholas Houghton, paleontologist, writer, dinosaur digger, and senior curator at the Smithsonian Institution. Lou Jacobs, the Southern Methodist University professor and paleontologist who heads up the Proctor Lake Project. Phil Murray, head of paleontology at nearby Tarleton State, co-sponsor of the project. Will Downs and Kent Newman, expert field paleontologists. And Dale Winkler, whom Jacobs calls the scientific brains of the operation.
Here, Nick. Oh, wow. So here's the leg, the other one.
Beautiful.
That's a toe there.
Nicely preserved.
Yeah, this, we ought to get that out.
The Proctor Lake crew can see the trail of the dinosaur in what to the untrained eye is